The parking lot shimmered with luxury. Polished black sedans, sleek sports cars, and SUVs gleaming like trophies under the morning sun. Then came the sound of an old engine rattling as a battered pickup truck pulled into a space near the entrance. Its paint was chipped, the bumper dented, its years impossible to hide. Out stepped a tall black woman, dressed simply in a faded blouse, dark slacks, and worn flats. Heads turned. Whispers spread. Some smirked. To them, she looked out of place, too ordinary, too black, too invisible to matter in this world of glass towers and wealth. They had no idea she was about to change everything. Her name was Angela Harris. At 55 years old, she carried the kind of presence that came from surviving storms. Her skin was a deep, warm brown, and her hair, natural coils pulled neatly into a bun, was wrapped in a simple scarf. She looked like any hard-working woman from an ordinary neighborhood, someone you might pass in a grocery store without a second thought. But the truth was that wherever she went, she was reminded she was black. At restaurants, waiters often seated others first, even if she had arrived earlier. At banks, she was asked twice if she meant to stand in the business line, as though she could not possibly own one. In shops, clerks followed her with wary eyes, mistaking her dignity for suspicion. These small cuts came daily, tiny reminders that the world wanted to box her in, to tell her she did not belong in certain places. Angela endured it in silence, not because it did not sting, but because she knew who she was. She lived modestly, driving the same truck she had owned for decades, carrying a weathered leather notebook where she scribbled numbers, ideas, and plans. Few paid attention to those quiet details. Few noticed how construction foremen paused respectfully when she walked past job sites, or how a real estate agent once lowered his voice when speaking with her, as though aware of something greater than her appearance revealed. But to most strangers, she was just another black woman moving through the world. That blindness, sharpened by prejudice, would soon be shattered. Angela stepped through the glass doors of the company's headquarters, her flats squeaking softly on the marble floor. The receptionist, a young woman in a crisp suit, looked up, with polite surprise that quickly hardened. Her smile faltered, replaced by the thin expression reserved for someone who clearly did not belong. "Good morning," Angela said calmly. "I'm here for the meeting." The receptionist's brow furrowed. "These meetings are for scheduled guests only," she replied carefully, as if assuming Angela had wandered in by mistake. Behind her, a man in a tailored suit smirked, whispering something to his colleague. They both chuckled quietly, glancing at Angela's skin, her clothes, her old truck visible through the glass. Angela repeated herself with patience. "I have a meeting." The receptionist hesitated, then dialed a number. A security guard drifted closer, hands on his belt. The air in the lobby thickened with silent judgment. People waiting nearby gave her sideways looks, some shaking their heads. One man muttered, loud enough to be heard, "First the truck, now this. She's definitely lost." Angela lowered herself into a chair, ignoring the heat of their stares. She opened her notebook, jotting down figures with her usual precision. To anyone watching, she looked out of place. A black woman trying to step into a world built to exclude her. But this was not new. Angela had lived through decades of such underestimation. As a child, teachers assumed she could not handle advanced classes. As an adult, loan officers told her to start smaller when she asked for funding. In meetings, men talked over her, dismissing her insights until someone else repeated them. Every room reminded her that being black meant fighting twice as hard to be seen, and yet she had fought, not with loudness but with patience, vision, and relentless discipline. What no one in that lobby understood was that she was not here to beg for a seat at their table. She owned the table. At last, an assistant appeared and gestured for her to follow. The whispers trailed her down the hall. Inside the conference room, the atmosphere shifted. Executives sat around a long, polished table, their conversations pausing as Angela entered. Some looked puzzled, others amused, a few skeptical. But then the chairman rose to his feet. His expression was respectful, his voice steady. "Mrs. Harris," he said, his tone carrying weight, "we've been waiting for you." The room fell, silent. Those who had doubted her in the lobby froze in disbelief. Angela walked calmly to the head of the table. She set down her leather notebook, opened it, and began reviewing the contracts laid out before her. Each page bore her signature. Each line of ink confirmed the truth. She was not a visitor here. She was the new owner. The men and women who had mocked her truck, her skin, her presence now stared at her with wide eyes. The same woman they had dismissed as unworthy had just bought the entire company. Angela did not gloat. She did not raise her voice. She simply took her seat at the head of the table, her authority unquestionable, her power undeniable. The silence in that room was louder than any applause. By the time Angela walked back through the lobby, the whispers had changed. The receptionist's cheeks were flushed, her voice suddenly softer, almost apologetic. The two men who had laughed earlier now avoided her gaze entirely, their arrogance crushed beneath the weight of what they had witnessed. Even the security guard, once circling near her, stepped back with visible unease. Angela did not need their apologies. She had carried herself with dignity long before they knew her name. She climbed back into her old truck, the same faithful vehicle that had carried her through years of work, and drove away. To her, the truck was not shameful. It was history, a symbol of every mile of struggle and persistence that had led her to this moment. Inside the company, her story became legend. Employees whispered about the black woman who had walked in ignored and left as their leader. It was more than a story of wealth. It was a mirror reflecting a deeper truth. Prejudice had blinded them. They measured her worth by her skin, her clothes, her truck, and they missed the greatness standing in front of them. And so the question lingers, how many times has hidden power been overlooked, dismissed, or silenced, simply because of skin, color? How many doors have closed on brilliance simply because people refuse to see beyond their own prejudice? Angela Harris never needed their permission to belong. She had already claimed her place.